Have you ever been betrayed by the one person who was supposed to love you unconditionally? Have you ever had your own family member tear you down in front of strangers, making you feel like you were nothing? Well, that's exactly what happened to me at my cousin's wedding reception in front of 200 guests. What my sister didn't know was that I was keeping a secret that would shock everyone in that room, including her. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Jessica Martinez, but that day, nobody knew my real rank. And by the end of this story, you'll understand why my sister will never underestimate me again. It was a beautiful Saturday evening in June, and my cousin Maria's wedding reception was in full swing at the Grand Ballroom in downtown Chicago. The venue was gorgeous. Crystal chandeliers, elegant decorations, and tables full of our extended family who I hadn't seen in years. I had just returned from my third deployment overseas, and I was really looking forward to celebrating with family and catching up with everyone. But there was one problem. I was still on military leave, and my official dress uniform was being dry cleaned after a ceremony earlier that week. So I showed up to the wedding wearing simple civilian clothes, dark jeans, a plain black blazer, and comfortable flats. Nothing fancy, nothing that would draw attention to myself. My sister Carmen, on the other hand, looked like she had stepped off the pages of a fashion magazine. Designer dress, professional makeup, jewelry that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Carmen worked in corporate finance for a major bank, and she never let anyone forget how successful she was. The first few hours of the reception went smoothly. I was having a great time catching up with relatives, dancing with my cousins, and enjoying the celebration. But then came the moment that would change everything. The DJ asked all the single ladies to come to the dance floor for the bouquet toss. I didn't really want to participate, but my aunts kept pushing me forward, insisting I join in. So there, I was standing among about 15 other women, waiting for my cousin to throw her bouquet. That's when I heard Carmen's voice, loud and clear, cutting through the music and laughter. "Oh my God, Jessica, what are you doing up there?" she called out from her table, her voice dripping with amusement. "You know those things are for women who actually have their lives together, right?" The women around me started looking confused. A few of them moved away slightly, probably sensing that some kind of family drama was about to unfold. I felt my cheeks burning with embarrassment, but I tried to ignore her. But Carmen wasn't done. She stood up from her table and walked closer to the dance floor, her voice getting louder with each word. "Seriously, Jess, when are you going to grow up? You're 28 years old, you don't have a real career, you're still single, and look at you. You couldn't even dress properly for a wedding." The music had stopped. The entire reception was now watching this unfold. My cousin Maria looked horrified, clearly torn between wanting to defend me and not wanting to cause a scene at her own wedding. "Carmen, please," I said quietly. "Can we not do this here?" "Do what?" She laughed, playing to the crowd that was now completely focused on us. "I'm just being honest. Everyone here is thinking the same thing. Look around this room, Jessica. Uncle Roberto owns 3 restaurants. Cousin Miguel is a doctor. Aunt Sophia just retired as a school principal. And then there's you." She gestured at me like I was some kind of exhibit in a museum. 28 years old, bouncing between different jobs, can't commit to anything long term. I mean, what was your last job? Some kind of government work? That lasted what, 6 months? The crowd was murmuring now. Some people looked uncomfortable. Others seemed to be enjoying the drama. A few of my younger cousins were actually recording with their phones, probably thinking this would make great social media content. "And don't even get me started on your appearance," Carmen continued, clearly enjoying the attention she was getting. "Jess, this is a wedding, a formal event, and you show up looking like you're going to a casual barbecue. It's embarrassing. You're embarrassing our entire family." I could feel tears starting to form in my eyes. This was my sister, the person who used to braid my hair when we were kids, who helped me with my homework, who promised to always have my back. And here she was, destroying me in front of our entire extended family. "You know what the saddest part is?" Carmen went on, her voice now carrying clearly across the entire ballroom. "Everyone in this family has made something of themselves. We all have careers, accomplishments, something to be proud of. But you? What do you have to show? For your life, Jessica? What have you actually achieved? The silence in the room was deafening. 200 people were staring at me, waiting to see what I would say. Some looked sympathetic, others seemed curious to see how this drama would play out. My cousin Maria was quietly crying, probably feeling terrible that her wedding reception had turned into this nightmare. That's when my phone started ringing. The ringtone was simple, nothing special, but I saw the caller ID and my heart started racing. It was General Morrison, my commanding officer, calling from the Pentagon. "I need to take this," I said quietly. But Carmen immediately jumped on that too. "Of course you do," she laughed. "Let me guess, another job interview? Maybe this time you'll actually stick with something for more than a few months." I walked toward the exit to take the call, but Carmen's voice followed me across the room. "That's right, walk away. Just like you always do when things get real. This is exactly why you'll never amount to anything, Jessica." As I stepped outside the ballroom to answer the phone, I could hear the reception slowly returning to normal behind me. But I knew that what had just happened would be talked about in my family for years. Carmen had succeeded in humiliating me. Completely. What she didn't know was that the phone call I was about to take would change everything. Because General Morrison wasn't calling about a job interview or some minor government position, he was calling to inform me that I had just been selected for a promotion that only 12 people in the entire U.S. Army receive each year. And in exactly 48 hours, my secret would be revealed in a way that would shock everyone who witnessed Carmen's cruelty. As I answered that call and heard the words that would change my life forever, I realized that my sister was about to learn the hardest lesson of her life. Never judge someone when you don't know the whole story, because sometimes the person you're tearing down is actually the person everyone else should be looking up to. "General Morrison, this is Lieutenant Colonel Martinez," I answered, trying to keep my voice steady despite the emotional storm raging inside me. "Jessica, I hope I'm not interrupting anything important," came the familiar voice of my commanding officer from the Pentagon. I looked back through the glass doors at the wedding reception, where I could see Carmen still holding court, probably telling everyone more stories about my failures in life. "No, sir, not at all. What can I do for you?" "Well, I have some news that couldn't wait until Monday. Are you somewhere private where we can talk?" My heart started racing. Calls from 4-star generals on Saturday nights were never routine. "Yes, sir, I'm outside. I can talk freely." "Jessica, the promotion board results came in this afternoon. I wanted to personally inform you that you've been selected for promotion to full colonel, effective immediately. But that's not the big news." I nearly dropped the phone. Full colonel at 28 was almost unheard of, especially for someone who had spent the last 3 years on classified assignments that my family knew nothing about. "Sir, thank you, sir. I'm honored." "Hold on. There's more. The Secretary of Defense wants to meet with you Monday morning. You're being considered for the youngest battalion command position in Army history. Jessica, we're talking about leading 800 soldiers. This is unprecedented for someone your age." The world was spinning around me. While my sister was inside telling everyone what a failure I was being offered one of the most prestigious positions in the United States military. "But there's something else," General Morrison continued, and I could hear a strange tone in his voice. "The president is hosting a military appreciation dinner next Friday at the White House. You're not just invited, you're being personally recognized for your classified work overseas. Jessica, they're giving you the Distinguished Service Cross." I couldn't breathe. The Distinguished Service Cross was the second highest military decoration, awarded for extraordinary heroism in combat. Only about 100 people receive it each decade. "Sir, I don't understand. The mission reports are all classified. How can they? The classification has been lifted. Jessica, the American people are going to learn what you did in Afghanistan. The 3 villages you saved, the 200 civilians you evacuated under fire, the intelligence you gathered that prevented a major terrorist attack. It's all being declassified for the ceremony." Tears were streaming down my face now. For 3 years, I had lived with the weight of what had happened overseas, unable to tell anyone, not even my family, about the missions that had earned me rapid promotions and commendations. General, my family, they have no idea about any of this. Well, that's going to change very soon. The White House press office is releasing the story Tuesday morning. By Wednesday, Jessica, you're going to be on every news channel in America. They're calling you the most decorated female combat officer of your generation. Just then, through the glass doors, I saw Carmen gesturing dramatically to a group of relatives, clearly continuing her character assassination. Several people were nodding along, probably agreeing with her assessment of my directionless life. Sir, can I ask you something? Of course. Is there any way? Could my family find out about this sooner? Like, tomorrow? General Morrison chuckled. Actually, funny you should ask. We need you to report to the Chicago Recruitment Center tomorrow morning for some paperwork related to your new position. The commanding officer there, Colonel Washington, is an old friend of mine. I could ask him to make it. Interesting. What do you mean? Well, let's just say that when a decorated lieutenant colonel walks into a recruitment center, it tends to make an impression, especially when that lieutenant colonel is about to become one of the youngest full colonels in Army history. After I hung up the phone, I stood outside the ballroom for another 10 minutes, trying to process everything that had just happened. My entire life was about to change. The family that was inside mocking me was about to discover that the failure they were laughing at was actually a war hero. But the most satisfying part, they were all going to find out in the most dramatic way possible. When I walked back into the reception, Carmen immediately spotted me and couldn't resist another jab. Well, look who's back. Let me guess, another job rejection? Or maybe that was someone calling to tell you that you didn't get an apartment? Because your credit isn't good enough? The laughter from her table was cruel and loud. But this time, instead of feeling hurt, I felt something else entirely. I felt powerful. Because I knew something they didn't. Actually, Carmen, I said calmly, walking over to her table, that was my commanding officer calling from Washington. Your commanding officer? She laughed even harder. Jessica, you don't have to make up stories to impress people. We all know you've been bouncing between temp jobs for the past few years. Uncle Roberto, who had been listening to the conversation, shook his head sadly. Mija, your sister is right. It's time to be honest with yourself and with the family. What kind of work are you really doing? I looked around the table at all the faces staring at me with a mixture of pity and judgment. These people had known me my entire life, but they had no idea who I really was or what I had accomplished. You know what? I said, my voice steady and calm. You're absolutely right. It's time to be honest. Tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., I have to report to the Chicago Military Recruitment Center on Michigan Avenue for some important paperwork. Carmen rolled her eyes. Let me guess, you're thinking about joining the military now? Jessica, you're 28 years old. Don't you think it's a little late to start over? Again? Anyone who wants to know the truth about what I do for a living is welcome to meet me there tomorrow, I continued, ignoring her sarcasm. The address is 1234 Michigan Avenue, 10 a.m. sharp. Oh, this should be good, Carmen said to the table. Everyone hear that? Jessica wants us to come watch her sign up for the military. Maybe she'll finally find something she can stick with. But my cousin Maria, who had been quiet during most of this drama, was looking at me with curiosity. Jessica, are you serious? You want us to come to a military recruitment center tomorrow? I'm completely serious. Anyone who wants to know the truth about my life, my career, and what I've been doing for the past 3 years is welcome to show up tomorrow morning. Carmen stood up, her voice dripping with condescension. Fine, I'll be there. We'll all be there to watch you try to convince some recruiter to take a 28-year-old woman with no direction in life. Maybe it'll finally be the wake-up call you need? The entire table agreed to come, probably thinking they were going to witness another one of my failures. Uncle Roberto said he'd drive everyone. Aunt Sophia said she would bring coffee for what she called the show. Even some of my younger cousins said they'd come to film it for social media. As the evening wound down and people started saying their goodbyes, Carmen pulled me aside one more time. Jessica, I know you probably think I was being mean tonight, but someone has to tell you the truth. You can't keep drifting through life like this. Tomorrow, when you realize the military won't take you or won't give you anything meaningful to do, maybe you'll finally understand that you need to grow up. I looked at my sister, this person who thought she knew everything about me, who had spent the evening destroying my reputation in front of our entire family, and I smiled. Carmen, tomorrow is going to be very educational for all of us. What my family didn't know was that when we walked into that recruitment center the next morning, they weren't going to witness me trying to join the military. They were going to witness me being honored as one of the highest-ranking officers to ever walk through those doors. And Carmen was going to learn that the sister she had spent years calling a failure was actually someone the entire United States Army considered a hero. But the biggest surprise was still to come. Because what happened at that recruitment center would be nothing compared to what they'd discover when the White House called with an invitation that would change everything. Sunday morning came faster than I expected. I woke up at 0500 hours. Old military habit, and put on my dress blue uniform. Every ribbon, every medal, every insignia was perfectly placed. The silver oak leaves on my collar gleamed under the morning light, indicating my rank as lieutenant colonel. But by the end of today, those would be replaced with the eagles of a full colonel. I looked at myself in the mirror and took a deep breath. My family was about to discover who I really was, and honestly, I wasn't sure if I was more nervous or excited about their reaction. At 0930 hours, I arrived at the Chicago Military Recruitment Center on Michigan Avenue. Colonel Washington was already waiting for me in the lobby, along with several other officers I didn't recognize. But what I noticed immediately was the unusual amount of activity for a Sunday morning. "Lieutenant Colonel Martinez!" Colonel Washington greeted me with a crisp salute, which I returned immediately. "We're honored to have you here today. I understand your family will be joining us?" "Yes, sir. They should be arriving any moment. They don't know about my service record." Colonel Washington smiled knowingly. "Well, that's about to change. We've prepared something special for today's ceremony. I think you'll be pleased." Just then, through the glass doors, I saw Uncle Roberto's SUV pull up to the curb. My entire family started piling out. Carmen, Uncle Roberto, Aunt Sophia, Cousin Maria and her new husband, and about 8 other relatives who had apparently decided this would be entertaining enough to give up their Sunday morning. Carmen was dressed like she was going to brunch at a country club, clearly wanting to look good for what she probably thought would be my public humiliation. As they walked toward the building, I could hear her voice carrying across the street. "I still can't believe she dragged us all down here for this," Carmen was saying. "I mean, what's she going to do? Ask them if they'll take her as a secretary or something? The whole thing is embarrassing." Uncle Roberto was shaking his head. "I just hope this finally wakes her up to reality. Maybe when they turn her down, she'll realize she needs to get serious about her life." They walked through the front doors of the recruitment center, expecting to find me sitting in a chair filling out paperwork like any other civilian recruit. Instead, they found me standing at attention in full dress uniform, surrounded by high-ranking military officers. The silence was immediate and complete. Carmen stopped dead in her tracks, her mouth falling open as she took in my uniform. The ribbons covering the left side of my chest told the story of multiple deployments, combat service, and commendations. The silver oak leaves on my collar indicated a rank that most people never achieve in 20-year military careers. "Jessica," Uncle Roberto whispered, his voice barely audible. What is this?" But before I could answer, Colonel Washington stepped forward and addressed my family in his commanding voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming today. You're here to witness a very special ceremony. We are honored to have Lieutenant Colonel Jessica Martinez with us today for her promotion ceremony." "Promotion ceremony?" Aunt Sophia repeated, like she was trying to understand a foreign language. "Ma'am, Lieutenant Colonel Martinez is being promoted to the rank of full colonel today, making her one of the youngest officers in United States Army history to achieve this rank." Carmen was staring at me like she was seeing a ghost. "Lieutenant Colonel? Jessica, what's going on? How long have you been in the military?" 6 years, Carmen. I've been active duty for 6 years. The room was spinning around them as they tried to process this information. Maria was the first to find her voice. "But Jessica, you said you were doing government work. You never said you were a soldier." "I said I was doing classified government work. Most of my assignments have been classified. I couldn't talk about them, even with family. That's when Colonel Washington really dropped the bombshell. Ladies and gentlemen, what you may not realize is that Lieutenant Colonel Martinez is something of a legend in military circles. She's known as one of the most decorated combat officers of her generation. He gestured to my ribbon rack, pointing to specific decorations. The Bronze Star with V device for valor in combat, the Purple Heart for wounds received in action, the Combat Action Badge, the Afghanistan Campaign Medal with 4 battle stars. Carmen was slowly sinking into a nearby chair, her face pale with shock. But the most significant recognition, Colonel Washington continued, is this one. He pointed to a ribbon that stood out among all the others. The Silver Star. This is awarded for gallantry in action against an enemy of the United States. Lieutenant Colonel Martinez received this for single-handedly evacuating 47 civilians from a combat zone under heavy enemy fire. 47 people, Uncle Roberto repeated slowly. Jessica saved 47 people? That's just one mission, sir. Over her 3 deployments to Afghanistan, Lieutenant Colonel Martinez has been credited with saving over 200 civilian lives and providing intelligence that prevented multiple terrorist attacks. The family was completely silent now, absorbing information that contradicted everything they thought they knew about me. But Colonel Washington wasn't finished. In fact, we received some additional news yesterday that makes today even more special. He pulled out an official document. Lieutenant Colonel Martinez has been selected by the President of the United States to receive the Distinguished Service Cross at a White House ceremony next Friday. Carmen actually gasped audibly. The White House? Ma'am, the Distinguished Service Cross is the second highest military decoration our nation can award. It's given for extraordinary heroism in combat. Lieutenant Colonel Martinez will be personally recognized by the President for actions that saved an entire Afghan village from terrorist occupation. At this point, my cousin Maria was openly crying. Jessica, why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you tell us you were a war hero? Because, I said gently, most of my service has been classified. I couldn't talk about it. And honestly, after last night, I wasn't sure anyone in the family would be interested in hearing about my accomplishments. That's when Carmen finally found her voice, and what she said shocked everyone in the room. "Oh my God," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Oh my God, Jessica, what have I done? Last night, at the wedding, I called you a failure. I said you had no accomplishments. I humiliated you in front of the entire family." The weight of what she had done was finally hitting her. While she had been mocking me for not having a real career, I had been serving my country in combat zones, saving lives, and earning recognition at the highest levels of government. "Carmen," I said softly, "it's okay." "No, it's not okay." She stood up, her voice breaking with emotion. "You're a war hero. You've saved hundreds of people. You're being honored by the President. And I spent last night telling everyone, you were worthless." Uncle Roberto walked over to me, tears in his eyes. "Mija, I owe you the biggest apology of my life. We all do. Can you ever forgive us?" But the real shock was yet to come, because just then, Colonel Washington's assistant approached him with a phone. "Sir, there's a call for Lieutenant Colonel Martinez. It's the White House." Every person in that room went silent. Carmen looked like she was about to faint. "The White House?" she whispered. "They're calling you?" As I took the phone, I realized that my family's shock at discovering my military rank was nothing compared to what they were about to learn about my upcoming meeting with the President. Because what the voice on the other end of that phone was about to tell me would make international headlines and change my life forever. And my sister, who had spent last night calling me a failure, was about to discover that her unsuccessful little sister was actually someone the entire world was about to recognize as a hero. "This is Lieutenant Colonel Martinez." I answered the phone, my voice steady despite the fact that my entire family was hanging on every word. "Colonel Martinez, this is Chief of Staff Williams calling from the White House. I hope I'm not interrupting. Anything important?" The Chief of Staff of the White House was calling me personally on a Sunday morning. I could see Carmen's face going white as she realized the significance of this call. "No, sir, not at all. How can I help you?" "Colonel, I'm calling with some extraordinary news. The President has just finished reviewing your service record and the classified reports from your missions in Afghanistan. He's asked me to personally inform you that Friday's ceremony has been elevated to a full state dinner in your honor." I nearly dropped the phone. A state dinner? Those were reserved for foreign dignitaries and the most significant national events. "Sir, I don't understand." "Colonel Martinez, the intelligence you gathered during your final mission prevented what our analysts believe would have been the largest terrorist attack on American soil since 9/11. The classification has been lifted, and the President wants the American people to know what you did for this country." Around me, my family was straining to hear every word. Carmen was crying openly now, probably beginning to understand the magnitude of what she had done to me the night before. "Additionally," the Chief of Staff continued, "the President is personally awarding you the Medal of Honor." The room went dead silent. Even I couldn't speak for a moment. The Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration awarded for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of life above and beyond the call of duty. "Sir, are you certain? The Medal of Honor is—" "Colonel, in your final mission, you single-handedly held off enemy forces for 6 hours while evacuating an entire village. You were wounded 3 times, but refused medical evacuation until every civilian was safe. Your actions saved 347 lives and provided intelligence that prevented attacks in New York, Washington, and Los Angeles." Carmen gasped audibly. 347 people, she whispered. "Colonel Martinez," the Chief of Staff continued, "you're going to be the youngest female recipient of the Medal of Honor in American history. The ceremony will be broadcast live on all major networks. The President specifically requested that your family be invited to attend." I looked around the room at my family. Uncle Roberto with his mouth hanging open, Aunt Sophia crying, Maria holding her husband's hand in shock, and Carmen looking like her entire world had just been turned upside down. "Sir, my family would be honored to attend." "Excellent. Colonel, there's one more thing. The President has personally requested a private meeting with you before the ceremony. He wants to hear the full story of your service directly from you. And Colonel?" "Yes, sir." "Welcome home, hero. What you did over there. The American people are going to be very proud when they learn the truth." When I hung up the phone, the silence in the recruitment center was deafening. 15 members of my family were staring at me like they were seeing me for the first time in their lives. Colonel Washington was the first to speak. "Ladies and gentlemen, you have just witnessed history. Colonel Martinez is about to receive our nation's highest honor from the President himself." That's when Carmen completely broke down. She fell to her knees right there in the recruitment center, sobbing uncontrollably. "Jessica, I'm so sorry. I'm so incredibly sorry. You're a Medal of Honor recipient. You saved hundreds of people. You prevented terrorist attacks. And I called you a failure." I walked over to my sister and helped her stand up. "Carmen, it's okay." "No, it's not okay," she cried. "Last night, in front of our entire family, I said you had no accomplishments. I said you were embarrassing. I said you'd never amount to anything. And the whole time, you were literally a war hero who had saved hundreds of lives." Uncle Roberto approached us, tears streaming down his face. "Mija, how do we apologize for something like this? How do we make up for the way we treated you?" "You don't need to make up for anything," I said gently. "You're my family. I love you all, regardless of what happened last night." But Carmen wasn't letting herself off the hook that easily. "Jessica, I need everyone to know what I did. I need to fix this." She turned to face the rest of the family. "Everyone listened to me. What I did last night was unforgivable. I humiliated my sister in front of 200 people at Maria's wedding. I told everyone she was a failure, that she had no direction in life, that she was an embarrassment to our family." The family looked uncomfortable as Carmen continued her confession. But the truth is, while I was worried about my corporate, job and my designer clothes, my sister was in Afghanistan saving lives and serving our country. While I was judging people at fancy restaurants, she was preventing terrorist attacks that could have killed thousands of Americans. While I was concerned about my social media image, she was earning the respect of the President of the United States. Carmen turned back to me, her makeup completely ruined from crying. Jessica, you are everything I pretended to be. You're successful, you're important, you make a real difference in the world. And I was too stupid and selfish to see it. But then something happened that surprised everyone. Maria stepped forward and spoke up. Carmen, we all participated in what happened last night. We all stood by while you humiliated Jessica. We all judged her based on her appearance and what we thought we knew about her life. She looked at me with deep regret. Jessica, we all owe you an apology. One by one, every member of my family apologized. Uncle Roberto apologized for doubting me. Aunt Sophia apologized for not defending me. My younger cousins apologized for recording the drama instead of standing up for me. But the most meaningful moment came when Colonel Washington addressed my family directly. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to understand something. Colonel Martinez could have revealed her rank and service record at any time. She could have stopped the humiliation last night with a single sentence. But she chose not to because she has something that can't be taught in any military academy: humility. He looked at each family member. Your daughter, your sister, your cousin is not just a war hero. She's the kind of person who would rather endure public humiliation than use her accomplishments to make others feel small. That's the mark of true character. 3 days later, our family photo was on the front page of every major newspaper in America. The headline read, Medal of Honor, Hero Forgives Family Who Called Her a Failure. But the story that really went viral was Carmen's public apology video, where she tearfully explained how she had humiliated a war hero without knowing it. The video was viewed over 50 million times, and it sparked a national conversation about judging people without knowing their full story. Friday night, I stood in the East Room of the White House as the president placed the Medal of Honor around my neck. My entire family was there, dressed in their finest clothes, crying with pride as they watched me receive the nation's highest honor. But the moment that meant the most to me came afterward, when Carmen pulled me aside. Jessica, I've learned something this week that's going to change me forever. Success isn't about having the fanciest job or making the most money or impressing people at parties. Real success is about making a difference in people's lives, about serving something bigger than yourself, about being the kind of person who saves lives instead of just talking about saving face. She looked at the Medal of Honor hanging around my neck. You're not just my sister, you're my hero. And I promise you, I will never judge someone based on appearances again. Because you never know when the person you're underestimating is actually the person who deserves the most respect. Today, Carmen works for a veterans nonprofit organization. She left her corporate job to help returning soldiers transition to civilian life. She says it's her way of honoring what I did overseas and making up for what she did at the wedding. My story became a reminder that you never know who you're really talking to. The person sitting next to you might be a war hero. The quiet colleague in your office might have saved lives you'll never know about. The family member you're judging might have accomplished things you can't even imagine. Carmen learned that lesson the hard way, in front of our entire family and eventually the entire country. But she learned it, and that's what matters. Because sometimes the most important battles aren't fought on foreign soil. Sometimes they're fought in wedding reception halls, where someone you love tries to tear you down, and you have to choose between defending yourself and maintaining your dignity. I chose dignity. And in the end, the truth spoke louder than any defense I could have offered. That's my story. That's how my sister's public mockery became a national lesson about respect, humility, and never judging someone when you don't know the full story of their life. Thanks for watching until the end. If this story taught you to never judge someone by their appearance or circumstances, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible stories of triumph over adversity. Until next time, remember, The person you underestimate today might be the hero you need tomorrow.